This is K.M. Weiland, and you are listening to the 71st episode of the Wordplay Podcast. I'm embarking on a new project this week, my first nonfiction book. Several people have suggested I compile and expand upon the information from my blog, videos, and podcasts, and make them available as a series of books on the craft of writing. So, I'm taking the plunge. This summer, I polled followers of my blog to discover what topic would most interest them in a book. And, with those results in mind, I'm currently preparing a book tentatively titled Outlining Your Novel: Plan Your Way to Success. Of course, it will be at least 6 months before the book is anywhere near ready for release, but I'll keep you updated on its progress. Don't forget that my blog tour for my CD, Conquering Writer's Block and Summoning Inspiration, is ongoing. This week, I'm honored to be hosted by Anne Tyler Lord, Jade Timms, Carrie K. Heim-Benes, Matt Delman, and Amber Starfire. Be sure to stop by my blog at wordplay-kmweiland, that's weiland.blogspot.com, to access the links and read the interviews, reviews, and blog posts with the following titles: How to Train Your Muse, The Demerit System, and 13 Places to Find Inspiration. Keep unlikable characters from alienating readers. The latest post in the video series on my blog shows how you can mimic Orson Scott Card's The Memory of Earth in keeping readers interested in seemingly disagreeable characters. You can watch the video on my blog. New videos are posted every Wednesday. Meanwhile, enjoy this week's podcast. Use motion to spice up your scenes. Ever had one of those days when you sit down at your computer, only to find your character twiddling his thumbs? I was having one of those days last week. Chapter 7 of my work in progress, The Deepest Breath, features all kinds of exciting conflict, including a long-awaited confrontation between two friends turned enemies. I got to introduce a fabulous new setting, the rugged, exotic diversity of early 20th century Nairobi, play with some sizzling dialogue, and wrap up the action. Sounds like the perfect scene, right? Sounds like, but it wasn't. As a matter of fact, those opening paragraphs were falling flatter than a pancake. Even I was bored. The scene lacked something vital, a sense of energy and dynamism, a sense of motion. The chapter opens at the train station in Nairobi. My POV character, Danny Logger, stands at the end of the platform, frozen, as he recognizes the other character, John Quinn, approaching the ticket counter. All sorts of emotions are running through his brain. The scene is rich with narrative possibilities and suspense as it builds toward the confrontation that everyone, Danny, Quinn, myself, the readers, knows is coming. The problem, I realized, was that Danny was just standing there. He wasn't doing anything, and as a result, neither was my scene. I'm a visual learner, as opposed to auditory or kinesthetic, and I lean heavily on that propensity in writing scenes. When something doesn't feel right, I stop, close my eyes, and let the scene play out in my head, just as if it were a movie. My inner eye almost always knows what a scene should look like, and it almost always balks at static characters. Why? Because a character standing still, especially if he's standing still just thinking, isn't doing much to move the plot forward. Not only does he run the risk of presenting a flat visual landscape, he also lacks any actions that can be used to break up large chunks of narrative and dialogue. A character who's moving, even if he's just walking across the street, gives the reader the sense that the story is moving forward along with him. His motion imparts a sense of progression and urgency that is vital for advancing the story. I ended up ripping out my chapter's opening paragraphs and starting over. This time around, Danny isn't standing on the platform waiting for Quinn to see him. Instead, he's hard at work loading sacks of seed into one of the train cars. By the time he looks up and sees Quinn, the scene already has a sense of forward progression, thanks to his activity, and his internal narrative is divided into tighter chunks by mingling it with his actions. Voila! A few quick changes resurrected my scene from its near-death experience with boredom. If you find yourself struggling with a scene that feels flat or bloated, take a second look to make sure your characters are in motion. Unless there's a good reason for their doing so, don't let them just sit around. Put them to work at something that will move both them and the plot forward. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, Visit me on the web at wordplay-kmwyland, that's weiland.blogspot.com, and be sure to listen again next week.